any legislative body may decide on the basis of overwhelming evidence of fraud to send electors to the Electoral College who accurately reflect the president's legitimate victory in their state, which was illegally denied him through fraud. We must be prepared to lobby our Republican legislatures.
That was longtime Republican strategist and Trump ally Roger Stone on November 5th, 2020, 2 days after the presidential election, after votes had been cast, but before the race had been called. And what you heard is Stone laying out the plan for how Republicans were going to attempt to steal that election, pushing the fake electors plot. Now Stone is back and giving up the playbook once again on how they are going to give it another try during this year's election. It comes in a secret recording from progressive activist and documentarian Lauren Windsor, who brought us the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito tapes last week. This one is from a Catholic event in March at Mar-a-Lago, where Stone was the keynote speaker.
We're working on it. Lawyers, judges, technology.
What stops them from just like voting fraud?
They in some states it'll be easier to stop them. In other places, but at least this time, when they do it, you have a lawyer and a judge whose phone number standing by so you can stop him. We made no preparations last time. None. We showed it half a dozen places. And they really profound and now on offensive footing.
And there it is. They're going to try and get the judges in on the game. And while Trump's team lost over 60 lawsuits contesting the last election, they've learned a lot since that time. And they know now how best to utilize the more than 200 judges Trump put in place, like little ticking time bombs, to aid in their efforts. Now, that's not to say each of those appointed judges would be willing to do Trump's bidding, but when you look at what is going on in Trump's classified documents case in Florida with Trump-appointed Judge Aileen Cannon, there is the question of who else may be willing to help. Stone responded in Rolling Stone, which first published these recordings, saying, quote, "All of the election integrity provisions that I suggested are perfectly legal and should be part of any ballot security effort." He has claimed in the past that his efforts in the 2020 election were legal, too. This leads to another question, which is, what will Democrats do now that they know the plan and it's out there? Joining me now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, who is a candidate for the United States Senate and is a former member of the January 6th Select Committee. Congressman, it is such a pleasure to see you. There is so much about this that I would love to get you in the meat of, because not only if they tell you who they are, you should believe them. But Congressman, when they tell you what they're going to do, you should believe them too. So knowing what we know and have already learned, how do Democrats create the necessary levels of engagement to push back, further expose, and defeat these efforts to use our judicial system to steal the election?
Well, Michael, you're absolutely right. They are telling us what they would do. And more than that, they've already shown us, because they've tried it once before. Stone's point is this time we will succeed in overturning the election if we lose. And I think we're in a more dangerous, more fraught position in this upcoming election than we were in the last one, because the Republican Party tragically has consolidated around the big lie and around the big liar. And they have had time to essentially put in place different electors, as well as different laws at the state level to try to disenfranchise voters on the front end, but also that they can tap should they lose after the election. So we've seen this playbook before. They're going to run it again. They're better positioned to run it this time. The very best thing that we can do to try to thwart that effort to overturn the election is to make sure the election isn't close. Really, the other remedies that we might employ if we had to appeal through the courts, for example, we can't trust the Supreme Court. And so the only remedy we really have, aside from doing everything possible to inform the electorate, to inform voters, they're running the same playbook, folks. They're going to say any vote counted after Election Day is somehow fraudulent, knowing that absentee votes sometimes are different voters. That is, it may be one demographic that votes on Election Day, another that votes, by absentee ballot. They're going to run the same false playbook. So we need to inform people about it. And we also need to turn people out so this election isn't close.
So, Congressman, you have Laura Trump, who's the co-chair of the Republican National Committee. She was at Turning Point USA's Actions Detroit convention, and she had this to say about the message they want to put out there on the street.
We are also sending a loud and clear message out there to anyone who thinks about cheating in an election. If you cheat in an election, we will find you, we will track you down, and we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law.
I'd say that's a little bit of projection to some extent, because all of that could be applied to what they're already planning to do. They've already made a big deal about amassing over 100,000 people who will be poll watchers, which is nothing more than just voter intimidation at various polling places. What are you hearing and seeing coming out of the ranks of the Democratic Party across the country, creating the coalitions and the efforts to also safeguard against what is clearly a stated effort to catch cheating by Republicans, but instead really claiming it's Democrats are the ones doing the cheating?
Well, that statement you just played was very rich, considering that with their whole fake elector plot, this is exactly what they were trying to do, defraud voters of their legitimately cast ballots. But in terms of what the Democratic Party is doing, we are very concerned that they're going to try to suppress the vote in many ways, suppress it, as I mentioned, with these voter suppression laws, but also suppress it with having people intimidate others at the polling places and putting out messages that essentially try to discourage people. And, we've seen in California and certainly in other parts of the country as well, efforts in particular to discourage voters of color from going to the polling place through intimidation and scare tactics. We want to make sure that we push back against that we have legitimate efforts at voter protection. And so, we are, I think, marshaling election experts and others to volunteer and try to make sure there isn't that kind of intimidation going on, that everybody's vote is counted, that where these states have purged voter rolls in an effort to make it even harder for people to vote, that we're getting people re-registered. So we are taking this as serious as a heart attack, because at the end of the day, Michael, as you've often pointed out, this is going to be close, and it's all going to come down to who turns out. And given the efforts Republicans are telegraphing, it also may come down to whether they succeed in invalidating the legitimate votes of people.
So just real quickly before we let you go, Congressman, you're in your race for the United States Senate. There are races like yours around the country in blue and red states. What concerns you right now as we are 4 months out about our election process and what the American people believe or think about it?
Well, I'm actually quite optimistic. As you were discussing earlier on the show, our Senate candidates, the Democratic Senate candidates, are running ahead in each of these elections. We do have to run the table to hold on to the Senate. But I think we're going to run the table. We've got the best candidates in these states. And on the other side of the aisle, a lot of the MAGA people who won Republican primaries are going to be fairly weak opponents. I totally concur with the point that was made earlier that when these candidates, these Republican candidates, fail again, when Donald Trump fails again, the Republican Party will finally move on, not for the sake of our country, but for the sake of their own party. They just can't keep losing as they have with, their biggest loser, Donald Trump.
Yep, there it is. Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much, sir, for taking some time. Good evening and happy Juneteenth. I'm Michael Steele in for Joy Reid. So we begin tonight with an earnest question. What on earth is wrong with the Republican Party? The sad state of what was once the grand old party was on full display yesterday when the convicted felon / Republican presidential nominee, Donald Trump, held a particularly unhinged rally where he spent 90 minutes, folks, spewing a combination of lies, vitriol, and rambling word salad.
Joe Biden's granting mass thing. He's going to formally grant a mass amnesty to millions of illegal aliens. Less than 4 years ago, our border was secure. Inflation was nowhere to be seen. The world was at peace. In 2016, we won. And then we did much better here in 2020. But lots of things happened. And then in the end, we won. But by that time, it was a little late. Every time the radical left Democrats, Marxists, communists, and fascists indict me, I consider it a great badge of honor. Remember, I got indicted more than Alphonse Capone. Al Capone. What's better, this or sitting on the Pacific or the Atlantic, which has sharks? You don't have sharks. See, that's a big advantage.
Okay, so let's just be clear, and then we want to clear up a few things in the process. 4 years ago, the world was not at peace. Trump did not win the state of Wisconsin or the election in 2020, and he has not been indicted more times than Al Capone. But perhaps even more embarrassing than Trump's deranged rant is his MAGA cronies' pathetic attempts to defend him, creating alternate realities where Trump is actually George Washington and Joe Biden is the convicted felon. No, really. Their words, not mine.
I believe today it's a 1776 moment in 2024, and Donald Trump is the George Washington of our moment. That is what I believe.
The next time you hear the word felon in this election, I think the felon in this election is Joe Biden. What he's doing to the country is criminal.
Now, it's also notable to take note of the fact that this rally took place in Wisconsin, just 30 miles outside of Milwaukee. You know, the city Trump called horrible last week. Well, that also happens to be the location of next month's Republican National Convention. Trump made somewhat of an attempt to sort of clean up the mess he made on aisle 9 by claiming he really loves Milwaukee, even as new reporting shows he wasn't even planning on staying there during the convention in the first place. Trump was reportedly planning on staying 90 miles away in, Chicago. That is, until reporters actually pressed him on it. In an interview with a local news station, Trump claimed he was, quote, always planning on staying in Milwaukee. But Chicago law enforcement confirmed to NBC News that Secret Service and local officials were, in fact, acting on plans for Trump to stay at his Chicago hotel as recently as Monday. Now, folks, having worked on conventions in the past, I can tell you straight up, it is a difficult process, and though location matters, it is about where you want to make a statement to the people that you're there for them. And that's probably why Republicans chose Milwaukee in Wisconsin, right? Because they want to win Wisconsin, right? But the statement Trump is sending to the people of Wisconsin is very loud and clear. He'd rather be in Chicago. Joining me now is Rick Tyler, MSNBC News, MSNBC political analyst and Republican strategist, and Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino and an MSNBC contributor. Welcome to you both. It's good to be back at the table with you again. So Rick, we were kind of talking off camera about the fumes, the things that make you go a little nutty in the night. I want to play for you J.D. Vance, who was on Fox News talking about how wrong he was. Let's take a listen.
You've said I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him. terrible candidate. Idiot if you voted for him. Might be America's Hitler. Might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible. Those are things that the left is going to come after you, and they're probably going to be put in ads should you be chosen as the VP pick. How do you deal with them now?
Yeah, well, I think the simple answer is you've got to respect the American people enough to just level with them. Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president, and it's one of the reasons why I'm working so hard to make sure he gets a second term.
So clearly he's checked the idiot box. What say you, sir?
Lead poisoning. We have a problem with lead poisoning in Ohio. It's rampant throughout the country. We need to get ahead of it. I don't have any other way to explain it. I wish I did. He clearly has drank the Kool-Aid. He's all on board. But, you know, look, one thing I've learned, I think you've probably taken the same lesson in the last 30 years, is leadership is rare.
Yeah.
It really is rare.
Yeah.
And we call these people on Capitol
It's
Hill.
rare and it requires a lot.
It requires determination, courage, and taking the country where it seemingly doesn't want to go. But it also requires a vision of where you want to take the country. And Trump doesn't have that vision. And very few people have. In fact, I tell people all the time, I am so tired of talking about Ronald Reagan, because I love Ronald Reagan. Right. But could we have someone else, like another leader? Is there somebody
I think
else
everybody would welcome that.
we could talk about?
I would love to do that.
and it's not, so we all call these people across the street here leaders. They're not leaders. Yeah. They're followers. Yeah. They will follow their constituents, but their constituents actually need a leader. And that is the answer to Donald Trump and the current conundrum of the Republican Party. There will emerge a leader, because the things that Trump scares people about are actually real issues.
Mm-hmm. No, every single list that he ticked off.
Of course.
Right. He actually, that is his character.
And both sides
Trump.
will deal with those issues. But the question is, do you want to frighten people on immigration, on the economy, on all these things? Or do you want to provide answers and solutions of a positive future? The future is always frightening. Right? People are frightened by the future. They're frightened currently by AI. You know, I'm reading all about AI is going to take over all these things. But in all of these disruptive technologies and the way the economy moves, and with immigration, is the economy has always gotten better. The country's always gotten richer. Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan had the big argument about Jimmy Carter once gave a speech. It was called the Malaise speech, and the press called it that. He didn't mention Malaise in the speech, but he's basically saying to the American people, we have to accept a lower standard of living. And Reagan says no. And now when we think back to 1976, you remember 76, that?
I do.
And to today, who was right? Reagan was clearly right. We are more prosperous, more free, more than we could ever imagine. And the next generation wants that, but it requires a leader to articulate that.
But it requires a leader that is explaining the changing dynamics of the country. And we don't have that in Donald Trump. Right. If you actually look at one of the reasons why I think Vance is doing that, J.D. Vance is doing this, and why Nikki Haley caved, is because they have realized that the Republican Party is the Trump party. But there's also an opportunity for so many of the folks that are exiting Congress as we speak to say, you know what, I'm not Democratic, I'm not a Republican, but I am an independent. How more powerful would it be for them, instead of retiring, than to put on and switching their caps and saying we have an independent party? Because at the end of the day, we have the number one party in the country are independents that lean Democratic or lean independent. Lean Republican. So now is the time. But instead, they are cowering to someone who it promises to bring us back to the dark ages, and he says it out loud every single day.
But you both raise a very important and I think a central piece here, and it is leadership. And where you've had in the past Republicans like Reagan and Bush lead on an issue like immigration, which was difficult for them to do given the context of what was happening in the country and in the Congress, yet and still they were able to sort of put something out there. You have the Biden administration now a little bit stuck on that issue, but having now cleaved off some space for a different conversation, particularly after Republicans failed yet again to lead on it when they had the bill. How do Democrats take exactly what Rick is talking about in terms of that leadership, that important characteristic, and have that, to use the term Trump, the age question and the other issues that people are raising about Joe Biden?
So technically, I mean, you can sit back and say both of them are old,
Right.
right? But the difference between, I would say, Biden and Donald Trump is that this is where experience of how to govern matters.